All right, welcome back to another story, another narrative, another journey. This one actually is. I love how life works in the fact that Jonathan and I actually met up in Colorado. I can't even remember the name. I know it was just outside of Denver, but I can't remember the name of
Yeah.
exactly where we met. But it was up on the hill, and I remember there was a beautiful spot. We were looking at a bunch of different things, and our friend Nick actually put the whole thing together. So we were there together as far as like it wasn't even a mastermind. It was more of a bunch of people just kind of getting together. It was really an
Yeah.
awesome
Talking
time.
about marketing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was way more than
Great.
marketing because we talked deep stuff. I still remember the triangle,
Yep.
and I remember some of the
Drama
stuff.
triangle. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my goodness. So there was some deep stuff that we talked about, and it was really, really good, and it was personal, and it was helpful, and it was part of our own stories as we were crafting our stories. And there was, I don't know, about 20 people or so in the room, maybe a little bit more, and we were all kind of talking about the reality of life and how hard things were and what we were trying to accomplish. And that was 4 or 5 years ago now, I think it's been. And
Yeah.
kind of circling back, that's what I love about life. I mean, that the fact that we can create a bond and we can create a relationship, and then you and I may not talk on an every day, every week, every month kind of a situation, but I still feel that connection because we were authentic and we were real about the challenges that were going on. And that's why I said I love that part of your conversation. That's why I wanted you to come on to be able to share some of your stories, some of the things that have been going on, because we have really had several guests in a row that focus in on some of the stuff that they've been growing through. They've been transitioning some of the false beliefs, the false narratives that they've been living by into now what they're actually developing and growing. And I'm so grateful that you took time out of your day, Jonathan, to be able to step in and say, hey, yeah, I'll raise my hand and I'll share my story.
Yeah. I'm excited.
So
Yeah. I'm honored.
So let's see where this goes, because this is we were talking in the green room. We were kind of like, okay, this is stop, don't talk. We got to get this on recording. So I'm really, really excited to see how this might be a little bit longer. So you guys are gonna have to stay all the way through this, okay? Because this will take some twists and turns, but you're gonna have to stay. All right, so let's start with this because I love this question. We meet in an elevator. You got 30, 60, 90 seconds, whatever. Who is Jonathan?
Yeah. So there's like two answers to that question. There's the marketing answer.
I know. Yeah, I hear you. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that changes. And like anyone that's like trying to figure that out and like find the perfect thing, that good luck. That changes. So the marketing answer, I champion two things. I champion inner sovereignty and market domination for entrepreneurs who have families and are looking to build a legacy that doesn't just include a business or financial impact, but a legacy for their family and for their way of being and their relationships. So that's the marketing answer. The deeper answer, I actually have something on my wall, and it's a huge. You can get these art prints, so you can see I have these pictures. You can get these art prints, and on this art print is just what I call my document, and this is something I heard from Steve Hardison. And it's kind of like I am statements, but it's really focusing on like my way of being. So when you say who is Jonathan, the thing that really comes through for me right now is I am a conduit for life and blessing and love, and I am a gift. Actually, Jonathan Caleb Heston is my name, and Jonathan means gift. And so owning that and being a husband and a father who sees love, power, goodness all around me, especially in my wife and my kids, Chloe, Shiloh, and Gideon, and nurturing that truth with my being. And so there's a lot in my document. It takes a few minutes to read. But from my identity standpoint, like the deepest truth that I come back to is I'm a conduit. I'm a conduit for life and love. And humbly remembering that and getting out of the way.
Yeah, and that's tough, man. Because and I think that plays in directly to what we're going to be talking about. Because I'm sure that statement that you just made, as far as being a conduit and being that access to love and the whole everything that you shared there, wasn't the way that you always lived. It wasn't the way that you always believed. Or I'm sure that probably some of that stuff had to be developed. Is that true?
Yeah, I was peeling away the onions because I think there's my mind. I mean, I grew up in a non-denominational Christian home, and belief in gifts of the Spirit and all that. And I don't know how much we want to get into theology. So my mind was like, yeah, the Holy Spirit working through me and all that. But I've been on a massive journey of like what that actually, like a massive journey of trust and surrender,
Mm.
and dancing the balance between surrender and co-creation, and dancing the balance between surrender and actually being ego,
Yeah.
and actually being like, look at me, and like, and how that manifests out in the world. So yeah, it's been a journey of peeling. Wait, that's actually what that means. Oh wait, oh that's pride. Oh
Right.
wait, that's my ego.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I think that is a challenge that we all struggle with. I mean, maybe we'll jump off there. Maybe we'll talk about some other things, but that's a challenge that we all struggle with because, I mean, we'll talk theology just real briefly in the aspect that God introduced himself in the beginning as a creator, not as a preacher, as a teacher, as a anything else, as a creator, right? He brought order to chaos. And then we're made in that image, and so part of that is, yeah, we want to co-create because we're in that image, and that I'm getting goosebumps because I feel like that is. But then, like you said, it's like all of a sudden, okay, when does that happen where you just start edging and you're like, okay, well, I'm not the conduit anymore. I'm actually trying to take charge, right? So that's that I guess I don't want to say yin and yang, but that's almost what I feel like is those two. Some people call it the two wolves that fight inside, or the like. There's a lot of different ways that people express that, but that's
One of
true.
the principles, yeah, I love, yeah, just to riff on this, one of the principles that has served me so deeply is that wisdom is found in the paradox.
Hmm.
Wisdom is found in the tension of two truths that may seem to our mind, to our human mind, may seem paradoxical, but when those two truths dance, there's a center, capital T truth, maybe there's a center wisdom that comes out of like balancing those. And so, that dance of surrender and trust, and taking action,
Yeah, yeah.
and having vision and creating, as you say, co-creation, that dance of co-creation, it's one that I've danced, and I'm dancing.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know why this is coming out, but I love this riff aspect of it. So, I mean, there's that one concept of the fact that the old story, and I forgot exactly where it was at, but about the fact that one man built his house on a rock and one man built his house on the sand. So they were both acting, but yet one allowed his ego to choose rather than the other man that actually allowed the like you're saying, the conduit to be able to say, okay, do I go here? Do I go where? They are
Yeah,
both acting. But one
yeah,
obviously acting in ego, and then when the rains came and the floods came and everything else, and everything just gets wiped out, it's like, okay, but we both built the same house. It's just the location, right? And I love that concept, like you said. There's these two what seem paradoxical type truths or challenges in our minds. Frankly, that's our lives. I mean, we grow up looking at it and saying, okay, and this is what our narrative is entirely about, is we actually grow up with a belief that this is how we are going to step into our lives, our adult, our business, whatever. We step into that. That's the belief that we assume. And whether that was spoken or implied or experiential, we believe it and we accept it. And then we just start to step forward. So, uh, anyway, I don't know where we're going to go here, but let's start with this aspect. What was your belief of how you were going to show up in the business world, show up as an entrepreneur, show up as Jonathan? What was your belief on how you were going to be able to do that before you started going through some of these different transitions and shifts? And I know we may get into that aspect as well.
yeah. I mean, I think there's like I think there's I've mapped this out a little bit, and I think most men, at least, and a lot of women, go through a stage of like being a dreamer. At least people that are building something, that are creating, generally business owners, entrepreneurs, right? So there's a stage of being a dreamer and then an achiever. And at some point in the achieving stage, it's like, wait, I worked so hard to get here, and I'm not where I want to be, and it's not what I thought it would be, and like there's all this like, wait, I'm not fulfilled. There's all this questioning that starts to happen, and then from that point, like sometimes it's like, well, okay, let's change the goalposts. It's not 1 million, it's 10 million. It's not this wife, it's this wife. It's it's not this house, it's this house. It's not this career path, it's that career path. And I think that achiever stage is what you're talking about, because it's like that narrative moment where what was driving, for me, what was driving me, when I hit the achiever stage, I think it was like wanting to prove wanting to prove and wanting to be, I don't know how to put this into words, like wanting to be an answer. And wanting to find, like, have the secret sauce, have the special answer, have the unique thing, have this. There was an element of that. And I built a lot of the first part of my business. And I don't know, I only know this in hindsight, but like unconsciously trying to prove that I was good enough, trying to prove that I was special, trying to prove that I had something that others didn't have. And there's reasons why that was layered in there. But a lot of it was just unconscious. And a lot of it, we could say the ego, whatever terms we want to apply, it was like really me putting myself, me trusting the sand, my own sand. And then like I built the house. I'm like, this house kind of sucks. Like, this isn't, I'm not happy. I'm not aligned. I'm not fulfilled. And so I think the dreamer, achiever, and then I think all achievers hit this stage that I call the shaking season. And it's this stage where, and it's a blessing, it's a gift. It's like, it's such a gift because it's this opportunity where all the stuff that I adopted about like who I am and why I'm worthy and am I good enough and how I prove I'm good, like all that stuff is shaken away. And it's freaking scary. And I'm not saying all of it has been shaken away. I'm not saying I've arrived. But like there's a shaking season where like people go through the season where all those unconscious drivers, I call them UCDs, like are shaken out. And you're faced with who's in the mirror and how are you going to be and how are you going to live. And that's what happened to me. And there was a lot of different instigating factors that we can go into. But to answer your question, I don't know if I had a clear, I mean, the typical, I want to be a successful entrepreneur. But on top of that, I wanted to help heal people's hearts and find the answer to do that. And a lot of my shaking season brought me to the answer that like, I'm not the answer. I'm not special. I'm not on a unique journey. I'm not on a unique path. But I'm a brother and I'm someone that can walk alongside someone. So I don't know. That meandered all over the place. Hopefully that answered your question.
It did. Yes. And I think there's two things and I'm not sure which path to take. So let me just start with this question. And I think, let me write this other question down so that way I don't forget it, because we'll probably get going on that one and then we'll
Love it.
Come back to it. The one thing, and I love the fact that you put this into the terms of it's a shaking season, and it basically takes all of those things that you believed were going to be fulfillment, and then you use the word success. And most of us, when we first step into our entrepreneur, our business or whatever, we look at success and we talk about this all the time. In fact, it's been a repeating topic. Success is defined either by a title or by a position or by money or by material things. Whatever you have, that defines whether you are quote unquote successful or not. And I know Tony Grubmeyer, he talks about this all the time when he talks about success because he had a podcast specifically on that. How do we define that success? So in terms of this shaking times, was the definition of success one of those things that was completely shaken for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great question. Absolutely, but not just the definition. For me, even before the shaking season, my mental construct of success was about being. It's about like who was I being? Like I remember driving in a car with a friend when I was like 20, 21, and just talking about certain people, very few in my life, but certain people, like when I was around them, I just felt inspired. I felt uplifted. I felt seen. I felt understood. I felt loved. I felt encouraged. And I remember talking with my friend, that, I was like, I think 2021, I can't remember exactly. And just like how I wanted to be that. So there was already a focus on being, but part of what got shaken away was like all of my projections on like what that meant in the formulas that we build around what that means and how to be there and how to get there. And my role in that, my responsibility in that. And so, yeah, the definition in this season that I'm in anyway, the definition really got peeled back I think a lot of people right now are dealing with like existential questions. That was a huge part of my journey, spiritual questions, nihilism, even past nihilism into absurdity, and just wrestling like with suffering, wrestling with God, wrestling with all of those things. And so it just like continually, because it was so integrated in how I grew up, when I went through my shaking season, all of that was shaken on a really deep level. And so my whole definition was, I was even to the point where it was like questioning definition itself, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. It
So
goes.
it wasn't even just like, hey, my financial and this. It's like, what's the effing point of any of it?
Right. Yeah. And so I want to ask a little bit deeper into the shaking part, because I think this is really important, especially the fact that so many people go through this. But before I do that, I kind of want to bring out, and I don't know why sometimes I have these feelings and questions, but I want to bring out this. There is always, and you mentioned it, and I don't know if you even realized you mentioned it, but there's always this thread of beauty that's woven into all that we do. And when we look back on some of the things, and yeah, we can say, okay, I built this house on shaky ground, and it's all like, I don't understand what, and like, what's the effing point kind of, like you're at that level. But yet when you look back, there's this thread that you can see of passion and help and true kindness that shows up in our lives that should be brought. We don't want to discard everything that's back there. We want to make sure that
Absolutely
we
not.
want to hang on to those beauty threads that are woven into our lives and into our stories. And again, that's part of our narrative. Can you pick out one of those threads in your own life?
Yeah, my hunger for truth would be a thread. Great question. Thank you for the thought. Yeah, just my hunger for truth and beauty. Even just experiential beauty with music and nature. That's been a pivotal thread for me. And I just want to reiterate what you said. There's something so powerful in trusting your desires. And again, a lot of what I'm going to say is going to sound paradoxical, but there's something so powerful in trusting your desires, because there's always a seed in your desires. And sometimes, like, as you unfold the desires, you build a house on the sand. It's like, yeah, oh, there's sand, and this isn't where I wanted to be. But there's still a seed in those initial desires that's true co-creation and true expression of who you are and your essence. And, as Viktor Frankl says, like, the discovery of your meaning, the discovery of your purpose is that dance in trusting your desires. So I definitely don't want to communicate not to trust desires.
Yeah. Well, but I think that's important, because I think those are innate and born in us. I think it's something
Yes.
that comes out when we're born. And so we have that deep part of it. And again, people talk about these things, your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. And sometimes when you're looking at these desires or passions, whatever word you want to use for those, you start with that passion. You're like, man, I'm going to change the world because I'm passionate about, and you fill in that blank, right? And I'm just like, okay, great, I'm going to change the world. And then you start, and you're like, oh, dang, how did I get down this path when I really intended to go down this other path? And how did we get off track? And so, yeah, I can definitely see that. But, yeah, and then you mentioned Viktor Frankl, and I was just like, wow. And then there's this whole aspect of hope, and how do we keep the hope? So let me lead into this question. How do you handle the shaking time when you feel that your hope has been shaken and you feel that your life has been shaken? What are the things that and I'll give it two different ways. How do you feel about it? I mean, like, there are definitely feelings that we have to recognize. And then how do you handle knowing that sometimes those feelings are not true? Sometimes they're real, but they're not always factual. How do we handle that? What do we do when we're going through that? And maybe share some of the things that you're walking through.
Yeah, great question. I think one of the other through lines, I'm going to go back to your other question and bridge into this one. I think one of the other through lines for me was just like relational, just relationships, and realizing like how powerful it is to have relationships that you can trust around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of how I handled my shaking season comes down to my devotion to relationships and walking those out. And also just an understanding that this is normal. Like, I honestly think every high achiever goes through dreamer, achiever, shaking, and then a kind of a metamorphosis in some type of sovereignty. And generally that sovereignty is going to be expressed in a different way than what the achiever stage looks like. I'm not saying a different business. I'm not saying any of that, but just the foundation for how that sovereignty, individual sovereignty, is being expressed is completely different than the foundation in the achiever stage. Like in the achiever stage, I was driven by a lot of unconscious programming. I was driven by, um, like here's an example of unconscious programming. I felt like I had this shadow thing that I had to find with Carl Jung, and I was doing a lot of work around that. And that's all powerful and good, and it had a lot of good fruit. And I didn't realize I had adult ADHD, like intense adult ADHD. So I felt like I wasn't being consistent because I was self-sabotaging from some, unconscious thing. Well, I was also not being consistent because I have ADHD, and I just wasn't addressing. I thought ADHD meant I couldn't focus. I'm the guy that like is sitting for 8 hours working on something and not taking a bathroom break. I'm hyper focused, right? So I went on this big journey of realizing all these unconscious drivers and why was I doing it? How was I keeping myself safe, and shaking all that away to the bare bones of like, who am I as a human being a human? I mean, we're thrust into this life. We didn't necessarily, depending on what you believe, we didn't necessarily choose it. We don't remember choosing it. We're thrust into this life where life is happening around us. Life is happening to us. How do we transition into the stage where life is happening through us? And all of the answers collapsed. And when that happens, I think it's helpful to know relationships, and it's helpful to know that that is normal. Like, you're not broken if that's happening. That's part of the process. It's part of the stage. Like when I deeply study psychology, when I deeply study spiritual paths, when I deeply study, a lot of different paths have different names for it, but all of the paths point to like, this is a growth stage. And I think it's important that that's known, because achiever, especially us high achievers, our identity is so wrapped up in what we're achieving that when we hit the shaking season, we pretend that we're not there. Well, that could be an invitation. There's an invitation to pretend that we're not there. There's an invitation to like, oh, I need to achieve more to fix it. Go back to the old solutions. There's an invitation to burn it all down and walk away. And I think there's a higher calling there where it's like, wait, this is actually, this is the path between prince and king. This is the path between achieving and sovereignty. And it's normal to go through this stage where everything is questions, or some things at least are questioned, and you realize like, who are you, instead of finding these external answers or these unconscious pains or unconscious solutions, unconscious drivers that are operating out of trauma or pain. Instead of grabbing those external things or those unconscious safety mechanisms, letting all those get shaken away, which is scary, and really landing on like, okay, who am I, and how am I going to live, and what do I want, and how am I going to co-create that? And for me, a lot of that answer for me, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, but a lot of that answer for me was trusting and being a conduit.
Okay, so we're going to dive into a couple of things here, because I mean, trust is absolute. There has to be that trust. But in this shaking time, sometimes it's relationships that have shaken us. Sometimes it's a relationship that actually was toxic. Sometimes it's a relationship that was abusive. Sometimes it was just a betrayal. Sometimes, I mean, there's a lot of different things in there. So you said two things on that. One is that relationships were absolutely key, and then two is that it's normal. And I think we can come to grasp with the understanding that this is normal, and this is something that everyone goes through, and that we're not alone going through that. I think that's an easy concept to grasp. But then there's also going to be that group of individuals that look at that and say, well, you don't know what I've had to endure in this relationship or in this situation. You have no idea what I had to go through in order to actually come out of a relationship. And so therefore, I'm not going to jump back into a relationship, or I'm not going to seek out. And then there's those that are actually searching for a relationship and can't find that trusting relationship. So what can you say towards that on how to, one, find that relationship, and then two, craft and build and work that relationship into your narrative and into your story?
Yeah, what a great question. I mean, that's something I've probably taken for granted. For me, it was close friends, a coach, my wife. I think finding a place of unconditional love, and love being the paradox between like acceptance I'm like, hey, it's amazing where you're at, or it's totally okay that you're where you're at. And pressure. It's like, and get up and do this, and don't stay there, and that type of love, the slap of a friend. I think finding those rooms, finding those people is incredibly important. So when I say relationship, I don't necessarily mean a lover, I don't necessarily mean a spouse, but if you're in a place where you feel like there isn't anybody, I would set a strong intention to create that, because I think dialogue, Heidegger says language is the house of being, and what we talk about and how we talk about it creates our possibilities. It creates the house that we live in, or the position that dictates our possibilities. So if I'm talking about myself, like even shaking season is language, because it's showing that it's a season. It's showing that it's normal. This is part of the process of growth of sovereignty. Like, that paradigm fundamentally changes. Whereas if the paradigm is, life is meaningless, or what's the point, or I'm depressed, or I need some testosterone, or whatever. If the paradigm is that, then all the possibilities are like, you build a house of possibilities, and you don't see the possibilities outside of that. And so language builds this house of meaning, and dialogue with someone unlocks the new language. And so if you really don't have anyone, I would challenge that. I mean, even if you go to like an applicable 12-step group,
Right.
You're in dialogue, right? It's a safe container. You're in dialogue. It's powerful. So, and it's free. So that's like on one side of things. On the other side of things, you can always dialogue through prayer, through journaling, even with yourself. The different parts of you can dialogue. So I think the dialogue is one of the safe dialogue is one of the places where that relationship. And I think that goes back even to trust in God, is it creates that conduit of safe dialogue, because dialogue is what builds possibilities. And a lot of that, as you're shaking through, like, what's true, what's for me, who am I, like, as you're shaking through that, dialogue is what uncovers, I think, for me anyway, dialogue was what uncovered the things I could stand on. Does that make sense?
Makes 100% sense. There's two things that come to mind in this aspect. First of all is the one, because I have had people specifically ask and say, well, I can't find anybody to build relate. I can't find. I'm like, dude, what are your hobbies? Let's at least just start there. And what do you like to do?
Pickleball.
Okay, I was going to say pickleball, but I said it so anytime, so I'm glad you said it. But yeah, I mean, even pickleball is like that. I mean, I actually play like 2, 3, 4 times a day, or 4 times a week, and that's dialogue. I mean, like, and then today we had, all of a sudden, out of the clear blue sky, I've got a deep conversation with one of the guys that were sitting on the sideline. I mean, it's just it's crazy how that stuff happens, right? Go ahead.
So I want to share.
Yeah, you got a story here. Go ahead, man.
One of my favorite things about you, and I've told other people this story, so it's going to be funny because maybe I've embellished it over the years, but
I'm scared now because I don't know this story. I don't even know what you're going to say, so I'm just like, maybe I need to hit the mute button here real quick, because I don't know. This is a story about me, and I'm just like, wait a minute.
No, it's great. I think we were like driving, because I think we're in the same hotel, so we were driving to the event in Denver. I could tell people were kind of treating you differently, but I didn't know why. So at the time you were or maybe you still are, doing Lego, like you're on the Lego shows or something. So there was a little bit of a celebrity air about you, but I had no idea. I'm just hanging out with you. We're having fun, having good conversation. So like day 2 or day 3, I'm just like, hey, so what's, and I find out that you're into Legos. And so I'm like, oh man, awesome. How'd you get into Legos? Why do you like Legos? And you said something along the lines of like, I mean, Legos aren't my favorite thing. But I got into them, and now I love them. But I got into them because my son was passionate about them. And my son was so passionate about them that I wanted to join in with him with that passion, because I knew that if I was with him doing Legos and doing something around his passion, that when the time for the important conversations came up, I would be there. And that impacted me a ton. I have a 10-year-old son, a 14-year-old daughter now. So back then they were a lot younger. And that has stuck with me, man. And you said the same thing kind of about, I think it was about fishing with another son.
My
at
oldest.
the time. Yeah, and you guys were into fishing, and so I think you were on the Lego show with your son,
I was.
and so I was asking about that, and you're like, well, this is kind of the journey to that. Was he was passionate about it, and that passion transferred eventually. I mean, you're still doing Lego stuff, so you're still passionate about it, but at that moment, it was more about how do I find something so I can be with, and just that was epic parenting advice. So thank you for that. I've used that, and so it's funny enough. My son and I play pickleball together. So full circle. But yeah, pickleball is a great example because like when you're just being with people, things are going to come up, and I really think dialogue is so important for navigating. There's other things, but dialogue is so important for
Yeah, and that's
navigating
part
the
of
shaky stuff.
building relationship is
Yeah.
dialogue that you have to. And I do believe people get it out of order. And I think that I've seen this happen so often where people get this relationship. It's like, okay, we got to jump into the deep end of the pool with it. No, that's not how relationships are built. It's slowly over time. And you start with, first of all, what is something that you got in common with somebody else? And that's exactly what I did with Zach. And you told that story almost exactly the way that I shared it. And I've shared that story probably 400, 500, I don't know how many times, because yes, we still do Lego. I mean, we still do the shows. We do all that kind of stuff. So I'm still into that. But yeah,
Nice.
the way it got started was I wanted something to connect with my son over. And that's exactly. And then, okay, so let's bring this thing all the way full circle, because this is how relationships get built, right? Is, hey, let's find something that we're both passionate about, something that we can have a common interest. Now, I didn't really have the common interest in that, but okay, fast forward, that was 5 years. No, he was 10. So 10, he's now 23. So you're looking at 13 years of timeline. Did that. Then we got on the show. Then we started building, and we had a Lego business that we started attending shows, going around, doing all of these different things. My son got married this last August. And we're in a new season, and I love this word season. Like, we're in a new season where they're moving. He's got his wife, and he's building his own life, and I'm very grateful for that. Michaela is a great person, and I'm so thankful that he found her, or she found him. I'm not sure which way it was, but he asked me to be the best man in his wedding. That would have never happened if I wouldn't have started 10, 13 years ago, being able to connect with somebody, and this case, it was my son, on something that he was passionate about, something that he was interested in. So we're looking at a timeline, and you see that is how you build those relationships. And I love that you brought that up, because I think this is absolutely key, especially when we hit those shaking times. That's too late. I mean, yes, you can still reach out. Yes, but start building now with those commonalities, and start building now to have those. So I love that you brought this relationship thing up, especially as we step into, and I know many people are going through times and they feel like they're alone. They feel like it's not normal. It is normal, but this is where we start with that, as far as being able to build those things. One of the other things too, then this is another thought that came up, and I'm curious. I want to hear your thoughts on this part of it, because when we get into this shaking time and things start to fall away, and you're saying that it's normal, brought to mind the refiner's fire. And I've read several things about silver, gold, things like that get refined by fire. Obviously, it's put into the fire. One of the
Yeah.
key elements is fire burns away those impurities, or we would call them in our situation is those false narratives. The fire shaking is shaking away those impurities. And when you talk to somebody who is a smith, goldsmith, silversmith, whatever, when you talk to them, you ask them, how do you know when it's ready? And why do you sit with it? And they sit with it because it's easy to destroy the silver. It's easy to destroy gold in the fire if you let it go too long. So they sit with it until they can see their face in it, until they can see the reflection. When they can see the reflection, they know that it's pure. They know that it's done. And they immediately pull it out of the fire. They immediately take it out of that shaking time, and then go into the crafting of the beautiful piece of whatever that ends up being. And I love that concept, because when you say it's not normal, it's this aspect that, yeah, we all go through these things, but it's not an eternity. It's not forever. It's not going to be the rest of my life. We're being refined, and we know that we can find that. And I think, let's go back to Viktor Frankl. When he talked about it, he said the main thing that he noticed, especially as people started passing in the concentration camps, was they were dead men walking when they lost their hope. When the hope left their eyes, he knew that they were going to be dead within a couple of hours, 24, 48 hours, as soon as the hope left. And so I want to also bring that part in. So the hope of who and the fact that it's not going to be forever. So all of that stuff coming together here, where do you want to go with this conversation? Do you want to talk about some of the stories of what you actually have been going through? Do you want to jump into how you're crafting and creating your life now? I'm going to give you the right, and I love what we've been talking about, but where do you want to go with what you want to share?
Yeah, so I think right now we're at a unique time in history where there's more there's more shaking happening than ever. Um, and I think there's a few, like, there's different pressures. There's the pressure of meaning, and there's just so much information online. There's so many like, just exposure to ideas and the paradox of choice and everything. There's like pressure of meaning. There's a pressure to the distraction of, like, if someone is going through a shaking season, just the pressure of, how do I stay comfortable? Like, because, like, internally there's like a discomfort of, like, man, what's the point? Or
a panic, really.
I'm not fulfilled, and, like, am I on the right path? Like all those type of existential questions arise, and then it's like, it's so easy to go, like, okay, I just need to fill the void with more busyness, more dopamine hits, more scrolling, more addictions, whatever it might be. There's the uncertainty. We're in a massive time of uncertainty, and it feels like it's unique. It's not. Like, I love history, studied history, and everyone in their own time feels that way. But it's like, oh, we have AI, we have all of this stuff on the horizon. So for me, it was like there was deconstruction of faith on different levels. My dad passing away suddenly, and unexpectedly, and he was my best friend. And my wife going through a really tough mental health journey, all stacked. And I just got numb for a while. So then I went through distractions, and then, like, resorted to kind of my unconscious drivers. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is, if anyone's going through a shaking season, it's almost like you'd be crazy not to be going through a shaking season in this time. Instead of, like, it being like, I just want to normalize it in a way. I just want to,
right.
Like, and when we have our social media lives going on, and your relationship is with your social media, your relationship is with, like, internet personalities, my encouragement is to find a place, even if it's your own journal, where you can be raw and start with the truth, where you can just, like, really just tell the truth and really start to locate what are some of the unconscious drivers, the fears, the doubts, and really locate them and wrestle with them. Like, we all have dragons hiding under our beds, and, like, the longer they're ignored, the bigger they get. And so I guess that's the final, like, one of the final things that I would say is just, you're not broken. This is part of the journey. This is part of the path. And yeah, you don't have an answer. That's the point. That's the point. And it's sitting in that moment and wrestling with that, because you will find your answer. And when you find that answer and you stand on that answer, you'll step into a new level of sovereignty that you didn't have as a high achiever. A new level of purpose, a new level of grace, a new level of not giving an F in a good way, like, a new level of service and passion. But it takes going through that moment where you don't have an answer, and that's normal, and that's okay, and you got this. So I'll just say that. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you a kind of return question on that. What is the one action that you practiced that helped you the most as you walk through the shaking time?
Yeah, great question. For me, it would probably be journaling and prayer journaling. And I would go through, like, a month or two where I didn't do that. So I don't want to imply that I was, like, doing that, every morning at 6 in the
Yeah.
but, like, returning to just, like, a seeking, and a dialogue, even with myself. Dialogue would probably be the meta answer. Dialogue with myself, dialogue with others, being vulnerable about it. Telling the truth about it, even if I didn't have an answer, even if I didn't have a solution, even if I didn't have something, like, staying in the dialogue and just, like, taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly important. I love that. All right, so is there anything that you want to say? And I know you kind of punctuated the last statement there. But is there anything like, hey, this is the one thing that I want somebody to walk away with? This is the key to creating your narrative. What would that one thing be?
Yeah, I really like the through line that kind of like we discovered in our own dialogue. And I think the through line would be this is like invest in relationships of people that aren't around you because you're achieving, but people that are around you because you're you. And there's like a grace and an unconditional love component there, and a truth telling there. Like when you're in your own BS, like there's a truth telling there. I would like, if you're in the achiever stage and you haven't really hit a shaking season, invest. Like, yes, go achieve. I'm not saying achieving's wrong. Go achieve, but invest in those relationships. Invest in serving others and being there for others and giving to others, and invest in those relationships. And just know that like there's going to be an element of a shaking season in your life. In my opinion, I think everyone hits it, and whether you have or you haven't hit it, if you're in the middle of it, keep going. If you're on the backside of it, be vulnerable about it with others, because other people are going to be going through it.
No, absolutely.
And yeah, I like that through line of dialogue. To me, like the biggest through line of this conversation is like the power of dialogue when you're talking about these type of things.
Man, it can
Either with yourself or others.
Yeah, it can totally shift the perspective. It can give hope. It can keep hope. It can so many things that it can do, and I love that aspect of it. All right, how can people get in contact with you? What's the best way to make contact, introduce? I mean, somebody might have been moved, and what's the best way?
Just jonathanheston.com. You can friend me on Facebook. I think I'm just Jonathan Heston on Facebook as well.
Yeah. Now, and you're Jonathan, so it's JONATHAN and then AN, not ON. Most people it's AN. And then the last name is HESTON. We are going to put that in the show notes, so that way if you missed it, you can go back to the notes and then actually click on that and get back that way.
Yeah, and right now, I'm really like the inner sovereignty piece, so just supporting in the shaking season and navigating that, and then market domination. So generally work with business owners.
The marketing aspect of you coming out.
Marketing
I love it.
Totally.
All right, awesome.
So, yeah.
Anything else you want to add before we sign off here?
Nope. I feel complete.
You feel complete. That's awesome.
I've had a blast. Thank you so much.
No, I love it. And it's always fun to talk with you, because I feel like we were able to go into some of that deeper conversation and the thought process. And I really have truly enjoyed that part of the conversation. So thank you again for being with us.
Yeah, my honor.
All right. For those listening, if you want to catch some of these clips, because if you listen to the whole thing, it's great, but sometimes we pull out clips. So if you didn't hear all of it, or you want to go look at YouTube, you can kind of see all of the body language that comes along, because that's a lot of the conversation that you're missing. Take a check us out on the YouTube. But until then, keep writing and crafting your story, because every person has a story, and that story is worth